Hi, this is Ken and Michelle Bass.
And you're listening to the Resilient Parenting Podcast.
You know, as we sit here talking to you right now, we are actually sitting at our dining room table in our house. Because...
We have pants on. I just wanted to clarify.
Are you sure?
Hold on.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, we have pants on.
Yeah, never know these days. But one of the things about we do our introductions to our episodes usually sitting here at the dining room table. Then we get out and go around the Treasure Valley and visit other folks.
Yes, occasionally they let us out.
Yeah, we're going to be talking with those folks who visited here in just a bit. But we want you to talk to us too.
Yes.
In some form or fashion. Like if you have some questions for us or want to get a hold of us, there's a way to do that, right?
Yeah. How do they do that, Ken?
I don't know. This is the clever part of the conversation where I toss it to you.
Oh, sorry. Here, let me catch that.
Okay.
Yes. So there's a few ways that you can get a hold of us. We are on Instagram and on Facebook. You can find us at the Resilient Parenting Podcast. And if you look on the show note, there is a place that says write a text or send a text. You can send us something and it'll come directly to us. Eventually, I like to get an email specific to the podcast, but for now, these are some ways that you can get a hold of us. And we always encourage you to, if you like what you hear, make sure to like it, maybe put some stars on it, share it with your friends. And the other thing that we'd really love for you to do is, so you don't miss any of the episodes, make sure to follow the Resilient Parenting Podcast wherever you are listening to this current episode. Was that a lot?
That was enough.
Was that
more than I could have said?
More than.
I'm shutting up now.
Since when? Well, welcome once again. We are joined by Janelle Stauffer, LCSW, and the owner and director of the Resiliency Center of Idaho, located in downtown Nampa. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about your center here.
Yeah, the Resiliency Center of Idaho is a counseling agency. We provide individual and group and family counseling with a focus on trauma and attachment. Mm-hmm. So everyone who works here is trained in an advanced modality that focuses on the impacts of trauma.
You know, I never had really heard the word resiliency or resilient used as much as I have in this past year.
I wonder why.
We just happen to have this podcast, Resilient Parenting Podcast, and I never really used that word that much before, but it's popping up everywhere, I'm hearing these days.
It's true. Yeah, there's been recent research. 2 decades ago, they really started studying trauma. And then shortly after, they started studying the factors that help prevent trauma or help heal trauma. And so all that science on resiliency has been popping up recently.
That's wonderful. So you brought something today for us to learn more about and our listeners.
Yeah, attachment, right?
Attachment.
Yeah.
And I will say that when we were heading over here, Ken said, "What is attachment?" Huh? And so I think
thought it was like pictures or something you put on your email. No.
That's what we're working with, Janelle.
I see. Good. Okay, I know where we're at.
Dad jokes.
That's our baseline. So what is attachment?
Yeah, good. Attachment is actually really important. It's the connection or bond that we as infants, and really even before we're born, start developing with our caregivers that predicts how we will navigate this world and how we will view the world. It's really, really important. One way I like to describe it is it's the process of how we come to be, which is actually true. Our species is considered an altricial species, which means that we are born dependent upon a mature nervous system for a number of years. We're actually dependent on mature nervous systems all the way up to age 25, which is the whole course of time that our brain is still developing. And the attachment relationship is that space, or the place, we call it a holding space, where growth can happen, where that brain development can continue to occur throughout the course of development, and it's completely dependent upon brains that are already mature. And so that's attachment, the bond or connection or relationship between infants and other big people in their lives as they grow.
Hopefully mature ones.
Hopefully mature ones.
Okay.
I did write that down. I did write that down.
Yep.
Mature nervous system.
You looked at me when you said it, too.
Well, I was just thinking, No, the kids turned out okay.
Despite me.
No, and that is mature nervous system. What would that look like?
You mean the bond between an immature nervous system and a mature nervous system?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. The way that looks, I mean, it's no big surprise that when we're born, when humans are born, they're wonderful beings, but they aren't quite ready to do things throughout their life. They're not ready to know exactly all of the facets like reading or what's safe versus unsafe. They're born with some of that, like we're born with some primal instincts. But to really make it in this world, to get fed, for example, first, to have our needs met, to understand how to learn things, all dependent upon somebody whose brain is already developed and can kind of, one, show us the way, but that's not even remotely close to all of it. It's a presence that allows our nervous system to be integrated and safe so that we can navigate through the world.
So it's weird because Michelle and I have been watching a lot of National Geographic animal documentaries lately, animals in the wild, and that whole attachment that animals have instinctively, is that sometimes missing in the human world? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it can be. If it's missing in the human world, if attachment is missing, it causes some serious problems. The most serious problem in infancy would be failure to thrive. So babies whose needs aren't met, who don't have a mature nervous system to learn from, literally their bodies begin to shut down and they can't thrive. Later in life, when that's not there, they form emotional problems, but even physiological problems. We are biologically driven to be dependent upon an adult in order to make it in this world, and that's what attachment is.
Oh, okay.
And I feel like there was a study or something about baby monkeys, and they would rather, it was something about have food
Harlow's,
or be able to connect with, I can't remember if it was a stuffed animal, it was some kind of connection, and they would choose that connection over the food.
Yeah, that's the Harlow's studies is what you're talking about. And they would literally, the study was to define how important is attachment to the species, and they would deprive themselves of food and favor connection and attachment over that.
So we work with, in the Resilient Parenting podcast, we talk about parenting in all parts of life. So it may be, parenting your children or step parenting, grandparents raising their children, or even foster parents, perhaps, adoption, whatever, you name it. And so this is really important. And I don't know if we'd be getting ahead of ourselves, but what can parents do, or what they would see if the child didn't have what you're talking about in infancy?
Yeah, this is really good. I think it would be good to explain the mechanisms of attachment first.
Okay.
And then I'll talk about what can happen when it's happening well and what can happen when it's not happening well.
Let's do it.
Yeah,
Take it away.
Love it.
It's really just there's a lot, the field of attachment science has been studied and documented for the last 100 years. So we have a lot of studies on this and a lot of concepts in attachment, but really boils down to four things. The first mechanism of attachment is what they call proximity maintenance, or being close to our attachment figures. I mean, you can see when an infant is born, this is literally the difference between life and death, having proximity. But it follows throughout the course of our lives, that necessity of proximity maintenance, to be near the people that keep me safe, to be near the people that help me learn, to be in a community full of attachment figures also. So we'll talk about that. The next one is what's called a secure base, which means in addition to being available, present, proximity maintenance, is the person that's there a reliable source of comfort, safety, and love? And those are literally biological imperatives. We need safety, love, and comfort in order to make it in this world. And so the knowledge of this allows kiddos to kind of relax into it. They will literally, their bodies kind of like go into a powerless state, but a safe powerless state.
Right.
Like you'll see babies just like land into their kids, or even my teenage daughter, when she's struggling, she'll come in and just need a hug and settle in, and her whole body then knows I'm safe. And that is really important for, that's how we digest food, actually. That's how we know we can be vulnerable and authentic. So it's on every level, we need that knowledge while we're developing, but it follows us even beyond that. The third thing that's necessary is safe haven. So in addition to knowing I can get comfort, love, and support, safety, safe haven means I can leave that place, go explore, and come back and get that again. So, like kiddos, when they're learning to walk, they'll the walking in and of itself is that healthy exploration, and they have to do it as they're away from a caregiver. And then they'll turn around. There's my person. Okay, I'm safe, because that process of exploring actually activates a little bit of stress, healthy stress. If they take it and they turn back with that, and their bodies are like, a little bit activated, they'll turn back to their safe haven, and then their body relaxes and said, this was good. I can keep going. So think of that throughout the course of development. It's math. It's relationships. I can go and explore and try risky things that are within safe parameters, turn back. Oh, there's my safe haven. Go explore some more.
I feel like I'm still doing that.
That is exactly true, because actually this is a good thing to talk about. John Bowlby, the original, one of they call him the fathers of attachment. He said that in this process of all of this happening, and the last one, that we're developing neurologically in our brain a thing called an internal working model, which is like, think of it as the pathway in your brain that represents regulation, relationships. And so then when your brain's done developing, all of this stuff that's been happening in those years while your brain's been developing comes into play. And that's how you know how to ask for help as an adult, how to turn towards your lover as an adult, all the things.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we're just internalizing that. And so if that's not been happening, think about the kids that are trying that. Riding a bike is a good example. They are giving it a try, and they turn back in a parent's absent. Most likely decision would be, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep going, or I'm all alone in this world and can't keep going. So there's that internal working model that then follows them because of those experiences.
Wow.
But we'll be talking about rupture and repair in a second too. You don't have to be perfect. This would be a continual process of not being present. And then the fourth thing, we have proximity maintenance, secure base, safe haven. Now the fourth one is separation distress. So when kiddos separate from these people that are providing this safe haven and this safe base, they have a natural anxiety for leaving them, more so, of course, in those early years, and less as their brain is developed. But it's like a sign I have an attachment figure. It's just that natural anxiety that occurs when an attachment figure isn't present. And so I'll talk about what that looks like in different people. But basically then, based on these transactions, we can develop what we call attachment style. So we tried to name them. And there's 4 different attachment styles. The first one, or the one we're hoping we're handing out, is called a secure attachment. So, my parents most of the time for me is my safe haven, is my safe base. I can go explore, come back and get integrated. I'm creating inside myself an internal working model that says it's safe, and it's safe to explore. When it feels unsafe, I have someplace I can go to ask for help. That's secure attachment. So, there's a lady, her name's Mary Ainsworth, and she's the one that did the studies on these secure attachments. And she said that when in those early years, this was the 1950s and 60s, I think was her study, 60s, 70s maybe, She said that a majority of people that she studied were secure attachment, majority being 60%.
Oh, wow.
So that's been duplicated, and it seems to be decreasing in recent years, but it's still around that 60% in the people that have been studied. So yeah, let's see, what else do I want to say? When someone with a secure attachment leaves their attachment figure, they do experience distress, and when they return, they get soothed by being back in the presence of their caregiver. So that's when...
And it's good to give them that opportunity.
That's right.
Okay.
That is right.
So if you have to leave your child for a bit, it's okay.
That's right. And their distress is a sign. It's a normal, healthy sign that they are connected or attached. And the big deal is that they are relieved upon return. So, and then there's a second attachment that's called an avoidant attachment. And this is sort of like a indifference upon separation, like almost a numbing that happens in the system. That's like, oh, I don't care. Go ahead and leave. And that's not, that's not what we want.
Right.
It should be a little bit hard.
Oh, they're so well behaved, though.
That's right. These kids can be well behaved.
Yeah.
Yes. They look, quote unquote, well behaved. They are fine being alone with strangers and doesn't shift behavior when they're alone with them, which, that's concerning. Stranger danger then is not activated in a person, perhaps. And then when the parent comes back, they just kind of avoid. There's no response on that. And that's what Ainsworth found in those studies. And then there's a third attachment style that's called ambivalent, or it could be called anxious attachment. And that is where when a caregiver leaves, there is extreme distress when they leave. Very wary or scared of anyone else that interacts with them. When they return, they're hesitant with the parent. Like, you've left me. Why would I come back to you? Difficulty being soothed in relationship to that. And so they tend to, because they're so dysregulated, they don't explore their environment as much or go do that risk-taking behavior because they're not willing to be separated from their caregiver. So those are that. And then there's a fourth category of attachment that's called a disorganized attachment. And there's lots of reasons someone would develop a disorganized attachment, and it's the rarest, but it does tend to occur when the caregiver is maybe a source of the distress, or when abuse or trauma have happened, whether from the caretaker or not. So the disorganized, I always like to describe it as they send a message of stay away, come close. It really is kind of chaotic on the inside. So when a caregiver leaves, there's confusion, apprehension, and usually maybe even a freeze-like response at both the separation and the return. I've seen this happen in some cases of adoption and that have to be worked through, and then a trauma, of course.
Is part of that because they're trying to test and see what the energy is of the caregiver?
Yeah, I think there is some of that going on.
See if it's safe or not.
And there is probably an internal working model that is basically wired towards unsafety. So if a lot of harm has come to them, or a lot of maybe even what they might perceive as abandonment, any form of trauma, it's just like, this is unsafe.
Right.
And so everything is sort of taken from that defensive state.
Right.
Yeah. So those are the four categories of attachment. So you were asking, let's see, the question was, what was it?
So lots of different caregivers at different stages may not have started the parenting early on in the child's life.
Right.
And so they may end up caring for an anxious attachment or disorganized and maybe secure, but chances are they will need a little bit of help to get to that point.
You're referring to like grandparents and things like that.
Yeah,
possibly.
the grandparents or
foster
older
parents,
siblings,
adoption.
Older siblings, Yeah, adoption's a good example too. Yeah. The beauty, one of the best things I love about attachment science is that we know, because it's a mechanism of learning, that especially when the brain is still developing, you actually can create what we call an earned secure attachment. So even though your internal working model might be oriented towards an anxious attachment or an avoidant attachment or that disorganized attachment, it is possible to rewire for a new model.
And I know there's listeners right now going, how? Tell us how.
Yeah. The best, to take the mechanisms of attachment, the first and most important thing to consider, especially if there's somebody that has one of these insecure attachments, is tending to the caretaker's own nervous system. So that's what this all is. This isn't done through words. Mm-hmm. This is done through states between individuals. That when you enter the presence of a person with a really regulated nervous system, you can't help but start to feel a little bit calm around them. Right. And when you get into the presence of somebody who's dysregulated or anxious, you start to feel something, and it's not because of anything that is said. It's what's given out through tone of voice, body movements, eye contact, all of this stuff that's mostly happening unconsciously. So the first and most important thing is for caregivers to be tending to their own nervous system, which can be hard when you're working, when you've got a kid that's anxious or disorganized, because again, you are also feeding off of them.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So as the mature nervous system, it's like you got to take it up a step and really tend to that. So, I mean, the first thing is always, doing self-care practices and building a village to help take care of you and the other person and the kiddos. We just can't separate out when we're helping kids. We have to help their caregivers. That's just the way it has to be. So regulating their nervous system is the first and most important. And then there's just 4 things that these kids need, and they need it in their unique and subjective ways. And one is trust, that goes both ways.
Right.
Comfort. How can we provide comfort? Everything about comfort is really about regulating the nervous system.
Right.
And then 3, safety. How can I ensure safety, emotional safety, physical safety, all of those? And then 4, meeting needs. And so those 4 things are what needs to be, in addition to 1 would be regulated nervous system of the caretaker, and then 4, trust, comfort, safety, and met needs. Those are the priorities. So it's more important than organic food or choosing the most perfect school or, all these things that having everything perfect in the diaper bag, or what's more important is these 4 things and creating that. So, the advice I always give to anyone working with kids is to find a state of curiosity and being a curious observer of the kid. What strengths and what do they have to teach you? What about themselves, about their experiences, and thinking of them as a whole, unique individual, not a part of you, not a reflection of you, but just this unique being in this world, making their path.
Right.
So that's that orientation, curiosity orientation, actually puts us in a body state that is regulated. We can't be curious and scared at the same time. So curiosity is always
I love curiosity.
So we're learning from them as they're learning from us.
That's right.
Is what you're saying. Okay.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Yep.
And we do have, from last year, we have a few Parenting 101 episodes that speak directly about caregiver regulation.
Oh, excellent.
And so if you haven't listened to those, I would definitely go back and listen. The last one that we did was on stress and the window of tolerance.
Oh, that's exactly what we're talking about. That's excellent.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's one way that you can start working on this immediately. What are some other things for parents right now that they could do?
Yeah, I mean, specific tools. One is for regulation. You mean regulating themselves?
Regulation. Yeah, all the things to help with attachment.
Yeah. First of all, would be it's very simple, but all of the science suggests this is very important, and that is be aware of your breath. To that it's a sure sign of where your nervous system is. So it really is true to stop and take a deep breath. Actually, is doing more than.
Oh, I thought you were talking about in bad breath.
Oh, and there we are again.
I was checking. I was is it me?
Oh my goodness,
that's hilarious.
Well, on that note,
Mints.
could we pause and take a breath, and maybe our listeners could take a breath with us, just see, because they're probably multitasking.
Yeah.
We don't care what your breath smells like.
Okay,
that's
good.
right. Just a deep breath.
But Ken, I do have something to talk to you about after this.
That's hilarious.
Great.
So
That's
what's a good breath? What should we do?
A very basic breath. This is a very calming breath, and it is to take a deep breath all the way to your belly.
Okay.
Maybe nice and slow and controlled, maybe like to the count of 3 or 4.
Through your nose or mouth?
You can do either, but
Okay.
nose is fine to
Okay.
take it all the way to your tummy. And then when you release it slower than what it was brought in with. So you're releasing more air out than you're bringing in.
Is it the cleansing breath thing?
It's a cleansing breath. They also call it the parasympathetic breath. So on your exhale, you're activating the relaxing part of you, which is called the parasympathetic system. And so when you spend more time exhaling, it's like bringing a little bit more relaxation in.
Nice.
okay.
Okay, I'm going to do it. We should do it? Okay. You going to count?
Yep.
1.
Okay.
Go ahead.
1,
Waiting.
2, 3. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently, I'm full of hot air because I'm still going.
Yeah, you could.
Sound like a hot air balloon going out there.
That was good. I wasn't sure I got deep enough
Yeah.
because I hit bottom really fast, but then
Oh.
when I was letting it out, it just kept going. So
Yeah.
that's nice.
Relaxes.
Are there some places we can look to find out more things like this, more tips?
Yeah. There's YouTube you could ask for a relaxation breath on YouTube, and it will do specific breath like this. There's a breath called the VU breath that I highly recommend people try. It's got a soothing sound on the exhale. The VU breath is a good one on YouTube, but that's where I direct most of my clients is to just look for breath on YouTube. Yeah.
So what I'm leaving here with is to, 1, breathe. We all just need to stop and breathe. Look at our regulated state. Be curious. And curiosity towards the child, but also be curious where you're at, like how you're feeling in that moment, and do what you need to do. I know we talked about teenagers, and that's a whole other topic, and you've been kind enough to stay with us for a part 2 to talk all about attachment with teenagers. So if you have a teen or you know a teen, you're going to want to stick around for part 2.
And anything else that we have found out from this that we'll be putting in the show notes?
Yes, we will look at different resources under attachment, and we will definitely add that to the show notes for your convenience.
We'll attach them to the podcast.
Oh, let's see what you
See what I
did
did
there.
Yeah.
Nah.
That's good.
This podcast is brought to you by the Idaho Children's Trust Fund.